It was a freezing night in 1864 at the Tower of London. Captain J.D. Dundas stood by his window when something below caught his eye, something he would never forget. A guard in the courtyard was behaving strangely. His rifle was raised, pointed at something invisible to Dundas at first. Dundas leaned forward, trying to understand what the soldier was seeing. Then he saw it. A white figure slowly moving toward the guard. It looked like a woman, yet something was horribly wrong. She had no head. The terrified guard charged forward, thrusting his bayonet straight at the figure. The blade passed right through her as if she were made of mist. The soldier collapsed instantly, fainting where he stood. What Captain Dundas had witnessed was believed to be the ghost of Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, executed by her own husband, a woman who, even in death, refuses to rest. For nearly 500 years, people have claimed to see her ghost roaming England. She is said to wander the tower, carrying her severed head in her arms, appearing in places where she once loved, suffered, and died. Tonight, we tell the true story of Anne Boleyn's death and why her spirit is said to still haunt England to this day. May 19, 1536, Tower of London. Anne awakes in a cold stone chamber. She knows, without being told, that this will be her final day on earth. From outside her window come haunting sounds. Voices, hammers striking wood, heavy beams dragged across stone. They are building her scaffold. Just 3 years earlier, Anne had been the most powerful woman in England. Henry VIII had broken from Rome for her, crowned himself head of a new church, and reshaped the nation just to marry her. Now, that same husband was preparing to have her killed. And here is the truth that still shocks historians. Anne Boleyn was innocent. She was not an adulteress. She was not a witch. She was a grieving mother of a 2-year-old daughter, a wife who had recently lost another child, a woman who still loved the king who was about to destroy her. How do we know this? Because the man who orchestrated her downfall would later admit that the charges were fabricated. Anne sits at a wooden table, her hands trembling as she writes her final letter to Henry. Her words are calm, dignified, heartbreaking. If ever I found favor in your sight, if ever the name of Anne Boleyn pleased you, then grant me this request, that I may trouble your grace no further, but pray earnestly to the Trinity for your safety and well-being. She signs it, your most loyal and ever faithful wife, Anne Boleyn. Even facing death, she calls herself his faithful wife. Her ladies help her dress in a simple gray wool gown, placing an ermine mantle around her shoulders. A small prayer book rests in her hands. Her dark hair is tucked beneath a white cap. The walk to the scaffold takes only 3 minutes, down stone steps, across the courtyard, past the chapel where she had prayed just hours earlier. A crowd gathers on Tower Green. Some whisper, some weep, others stand frozen in silence. Many know they are about to witness the death of an innocent woman. Anne steps onto the scaffold. It creaks beneath her feet. She looks out at the crowd and speaks clearly. I am come here to die according to the law. I will speak nothing against it. I pray God save the king and grant him long life, for never was there a more gentle and merciful prince. She does not confess, because she has nothing to confess. She pays the executioner generously, a final act of dignity. Henry had ordered a French swordsman, knowing a sword would be swift and clean. He wanted this finished quickly. Anne kneels. A blindfold is tied. She prays softly, Lord Jesus, receive my soul. One stroke. Her head falls. A cannon fires from the tower walls, Henry's signal that it is done. And then, one final cruelty. Henry had not even ordered a coffin. An old arrow chest is found, too small, too shallow. Anne's ladies wrap her head in cloth and place her body inside, the head tucked beneath her arm. Nearly 500 years later, people still claim to see her walking, head in hand. Why does Anne Boleyn still haunt England? Because her death was built on lies. Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, needed a solution. The king was tired of Anne. She had given him a daughter, not a son. She had miscarried again and again. Henry wanted out. Unlike Catherine of Aragon, Anne had no powerful family to protect her. She was vulnerable, disposable. So, Cromwell accused her of adultery with 5 men, one of them her own brother. He claimed she plotted to kill the king. The charges were impossible, absurd, yet torture and fear made men confess. The trial was a performance. Anne had no real defense. The verdict was decided before she ever entered the hall. Even so, Anne fought back. She demanded the chance to prove her innocence, even offering a medical examination to show she had been faithful, a queen humiliating herself for truth. But no one listened. Her brother George died proclaiming the charges false. Her accused companions were executed before her trial even began. And her daughter, Elizabeth, was only 2 years old. Overnight, she lost her mother, her title, and her future, declared illegitimate by her own father. Anne didn't just lose her life. She lost her name, her honor, her child's future. Her execution was meant to erase her. Instead, it gave her a voice that has echoed through history for 5 centuries. Louder than any king who ever tried to erase her, the sightings began almost immediately. Guards at the Tower of London started reporting a woman dressed in white walking across Tower Green, always at night, always holding something in her hands. By the 1600s, people no longer questioned who she was. It was Anne Boleyn, forever making her final walk to the scaffold. But the Tower wasn't the only place she returned to. Every year on May 19th, the anniversary of her execution, witnesses describe something truly impossible. At Blickling Hall in Norfolk, a carriage storms up the long drive. It's pulled by 4 headless horses. The driver has no head either. Inside the carriage sits a woman in white. As it draws closer, her face becomes clear. It's Anne. But something is horribly wrong. Her white silk dress slowly darkens, turning red as blood spreads across the fabric. In her lap, she holds her own severed head, and the head is screaming. Locals have reported this vision for nearly 500 years. Same date, same place, same horrifying sight. Why Blickling Hall? Because Anne was born there. It's where her story began, where she spent her earliest years as a carefree child, never knowing she would die at 35 for crimes she never committed. But Anne's ghost doesn't appear just once a year. She is said to haunt 3 other places that shaped her life. Hampton Court Palace. This was once her home as queen. Henry VIII had new rooms built just for her. Their initials, H and A, were carved into the walls, their names entwined as if forever. Or so Henry believed. After Anne's death, Henry ordered every trace of her erased. Her portraits were burned. Her coat of arms was chiseled off stone walls. Even the intertwined initials at Hampton Court were hacked away or replaced with Jane Seymour's symbols. Her very name became dangerous. At court, no one dared name a child Anne. It was as if the sound itself had been cursed. Servants who once bowed to her were dismissed. Her belongings were seized. Her memory was poisoned by lies. Official records barely acknowledged her as queen at all. Henry didn't just want her gone, he wanted her forgotten. But ghosts cannot be erased. Guards at Hampton Court still report seeing a woman dressed in blue or black walking the corridors. She passes through closed doors. She climbs staircases that no longer exist. She seems to be searching. Those unfinished rooms Henry built for her, the apartments she never lived in because she was arrested before they were completed. Even in death, she appears to be reaching for the life that was stolen from her. Hever Castle, Kent. Anne's childhood home tells a different story. Here, her ghost is gentle, peaceful. She appears around Christmas, walking beneath an old oak tree. This is where she was happy, where Henry once courted her with love letters and gifts, where he still seemed kind, charming, and generous, before she learned who he truly was. People see her here in a white dress that stays white, no blood, no severed head, just a young woman remembering better days. Why does Anne return to these places? What is she trying to tell us? The answer may lie in what happened after her death. Within 24 hours of Anne's execution, Henry was engaged to Jane Seymour. 11 days later, they were married. Jane gave Henry what Anne could not, a son, Edward, but she died just 12 days after childbirth. Henry mourned Jane for the rest of his life, calling her his only true wife. But Anne, the woman he once claimed to love so fiercely he shattered England's ties with Rome for her, he never spoke her name again. For centuries, history almost forgot Anne Boleyn. People believed Thomas Cromwell's lies. They saw her as an adulteress, a schemer, a woman who deserved her fate. Only in the 1900s did historians uncover the truth. Cromwell's letters, court records, evidence proving Anne's innocence. But by then, the real Anne Boleyn had been dead for 400 years. Is that why her ghost cannot rest? Because the truth came too late? There may be another reason. Her daughter, that 2-year-old girl who lost everything when Anne died, Elizabeth. She grew up to become Elizabeth I, England's greatest queen. She defeated the Spanish Armada. She ushered in a golden age of art, literature, and exploration. She ruled for 45 years. Elizabeth never married, never had children, and that was no accident. She had seen what marriage did to queens, what it did to her mother. Anne gave her heart to a king and lost her crown, her honor, and her life. Elizabeth understood that as a wife, she would always be vulnerable. As an unmarried queen, she answered to no one. Quietly, Elizabeth honored her mother. She wore Anne's ring. She kept her portrait in private rooms. She never allowed anyone to speak ill of Anne Boleyn in her presence. When Elizabeth died in 1603, she had never known her mother in life, only in memory. They were not united in stone, but forever bound in spirit. Yet even Elizabeth's death did not end the sightings. If anything, they became stronger. In 1864, the most famous encounter of all took place. Captain J.D. Dundas, stationed at the Tower of London, looked out his window on a cold October night. One of his guards stood frozen below, rifle raised, pointing into the darkness. At first, Dundas saw nothing. Then it appeared, a white figure drifting silently across the ground. A woman in an old-fashioned gown, but where her head should have been, there was nothing but empty air. The guard charged, thrusting his bayonet. The blade passed straight through the figure like smoke. The soldier collapsed, unconscious with terror. At his court-martial, the guard swore he had seen a headless woman. He described her dress, her height, the way she moved, but could not explain the missing head. Captain Dundas testified in his defense. He had seen it too. Without Dundas's testimony, the guard would have been imprisoned for fainting on duty. Years later, another guard reported lights inside the Tower Chapel late at night. The chapel was locked, so he climbed a ladder and looked through the window. Inside, he saw a silent procession, knights, ladies, figures in ancient dress circling the chapel. Leading them was a woman he recognized from portraits, Anne Boleyn. The vision lasted minutes, then faded into nothing. So why do these sightings keep happening at the tower? What draws Anne's ghost back to the place where she died? The Tower of London has always been a place shaped by death. Built by William the Conqueror to intimidate a conquered nation, it became many things over the centuries: a prison, a torture chamber, and during the Tudor era, a place of execution. But under Henry VIII, the tower reached a new level of horror. Henry used it to destroy anyone who threatened his power. Anne Boleyn was not the only one who died there. Others followed, men like Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell. But their deaths were different. They knew why they were dying. They had opposed the king or committed real political crimes. Anne died for nothing. She died for being inconvenient, for failing to give Henry a son, for standing in the way of his newest obsession. That kind of injustice, pure, senseless, undeserved, creates a special kind of ghost, one that cannot rest because the wrong was never set right. Even today, nearly 500 years later, people still report seeing Anne at the tower. Security guards find doors open that should be locked. They hear footsteps echoing through empty corridors. They see a woman in Tudor dress walking past security cameras. The cameras record nothing, but multiple guards see her with their own eyes. What is she trying to do? Is she endlessly reliving her final walk to the scaffold, trapped in that last journey forever? Or perhaps Anne's ghost isn't searching at all. Perhaps she is protesting. Maybe she cannot rest until the world fully understands the truth, that she was innocent, that Elizabeth was Henry's rightful heir, and that the accusations against her were lies, carefully crafted by Thomas Cromwell. Or maybe Anne is still trying to deliver a message, something she never had the chance to speak in life. But Henry has been dead nearly 500 years. His ghost does not wander. He rests quietly in his tomb at Windsor Castle. Anne does not. She cannot rest. She will not rest. Something keeps her bound to this world. Perhaps what binds her here is our memory of Anne Boleyn. As long as her story is told, her ghost has a purpose. She is not just another spirit haunting ancient stone. She is a witness to history, a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. Every time someone sees Anne Boleyn's ghost, they are seeing the consequences of injustice, the cost of absolute authority, the danger of choosing comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. Her story did not end with her execution. It grew stronger. Anne Boleyn changed England forever, not as Henry's wife, but as the mother of Elizabeth I. She failed as Henry's queen, but through Elizabeth, she became the mother of modern Britain, the golden age of Shakespeare, the age of Drake and Raleigh, England's rise as a global power. All of it flowed through Anne's bloodline, and so did her ghost. She became England's most famous spirit, seen more often than any other, remembered in books, on screen, and in whispered stories shared by firelight. Death was meant to erase Anne Boleyn. Instead, it made her immortal. Some say she still walks in the shadows of the Tower of London, in the corridors of Hampton Court, beneath the oak tree at Hever, searching, remembering, refusing to rest in peace. Because some wrongs are too great to forgive, some stories are too important to end, and some ghosts are meant to haunt us forever. So the next time you visit the Tower of London, look closely at Tower Green. You might see her, a woman in white, walking the same path she walked on May 19, 1936. Anne Boleyn, England's most famous ghost, still telling her story, still seeking justice, still refusing to die. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video. It truly helps the channel grow. Share it with other history lovers like you who want to keep forgotten voices alive. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next tale from the shadows of untold history.